Hey, beautiful people, and welcome to the third episode of The Intersection, an ONA podcast from the Open and Affirming Coalition. My name is Reverend Derek Terry. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and TikTok at Rev Derek Terry. But today, of course, I am representing the Open and Affirming Coalition, where I'm the Director of Programming and Special Projects. This is our first podcast post-Synod. Hey, so if you came to the General Synod of the United Church of Christ and you came by our booth at Synod, thank you. If you have any pics, please send them to ONA at openandaffirming.org. That is my email address. Also, if you're listening to this podcast, you can check out the video version on our YouTube page, where we'll post pictures from Synod and other graphics for what we're talking about. Hope that you enjoyed our booth. If you came into Indianapolis and the free stickers and the other giveaways that we have. If you came to our dinner, thank you. We did have a few glitches, but thank you for your patience and the energy that you brought to the place. Many people commented on how good the food was, so hope that you really enjoyed that. And I would like to say, we were not afraid to spend money on food. We also were trying to keep our ticket prices affordable, and so that $70 ticket with the really good food meant that we did not make any money off of the individual ticket sales. So with that being said, all of our fundraising efforts from the dinner came from donations. If you came and you have not had an opportunity to make a donation all month long, we are collecting towards our fundraising efforts from the General Synod. So please, if you were not able to donate, or if you didn't come to the banquet and you would like to donate, please visit openandaffirming.org/donate. I think it's important that people understand that we do not receive any cash, any money from the United Church of Christ. 100% of our funds we raise through fundraising and grants. So please, if you would like to donate to keep the momentum of our work going, visit openandaffirming.org/donate to give. A couple other quick church announcements. Please mark your calendars that on August 3rd and August 22nd at 7 o'clock p.m. until 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, the ONA 101 webinar will be presented by Andy Lang, our former executive director at the Open and Affirming Coalition. So if your church is thinking about starting the ONA process or the Open and Affirming process, please come to receive some information on how you can start that with best practices. If you have started and you need to receive support, or you want to learn how the Open and Affirming process can help to revive your church and help your church to grow, please sign up. You'll pay attention to our social medias and you'll see where registration will open soon. So if you're listening to this podcast the day it came out, give us a couple of days, but registration will be opening soon, and you'll be able to do that on our website, and you'll have information on our Facebook page, Instagram, and Twitter pages. Last church announcement: the ONA Book Club is reading Melissa by Alex Gino. It was previously published as George. We will discuss the book on August 10th at 7 o'clock p.m. It is a youth book about a trans girl in middle school. And so we are encouraging families to read the book together, youth groups to read the book together, and to bring your youth, anyone 10 and up, to the discussion. We would love to have this be a multi-generational discussion. Also, this is the first part of a two-part General Synod series that we're having. Today, we're going to listen to a conversation that I had with the awesome, a friend, one of our Rainbow Award recipients, the awards that we gave out at the dinner, the ONA dinner this year at General Synod. She was the opening worship speaker for us last year at our virtual gathering. She is just an amazing person doing some amazing work, and we had an amazing conversation. How many times can I say amazing in 30 seconds? But check it out. Again, if you're listening to the podcast, you can see the video of us. We just took over a space as Senate was breaking down. You can check out a video of us having this discussion. And here we go. Hello, I am live from the 34th session of the General Synod of the United Church of Christ, and I am here with my friend. Introduce yourself to the people.
Hello, I am Reverend Rhina Ramos.
Awesome.
She, her, hers.
Awesome. And Derek Terry here, he, him, his, and we are wrapping up. We just packed up our booth. And I reached out to Reverend Rena before we got here and said, please do our podcast. So you're our third guest. Uno, dos, tres.
Sí.
And so just thank you for being here with us.
Gracias. Thank you.
So our first question always is just tell us a little bit about you, who you are. What you do for your ministry, your calling, anything that you want the people to know.
Sure. So I guess the first thing I always like to say is that I am from El Salvador. That gives me great pride. I immigrated to the United States at age 14, but by the time we left El Salvador, I already knew who I was in terms of my cultural identity. And I think that saved me, because coming to the U.S. and the first place where we arrived was Long Island, New York, it felt so segregated. And immigrants in the 80s, well, all the time, but I felt at that time we were not wanted. And so just knowing I came from a good place was very important to me. So I'm a Salvadorian by birth and by heart. And then what I do right now, what my ministry is to have and run a Spanish-speaking, open and affirming congregation in Northern California. We are one of its kind, because most Spanish-speaking congregations tend to be conservative and they don't welcome LGBTQ in the mix. So that was my call, and I started the church 11 years ago. And prior to ministry, I've been in the nonprofit sector doing all kind of jobs: community organizer, community educator, administrator, and I just decided I was going to concentrate in ministry because the times were hard when President Trump got elected, and homophobia, transphobia, and anti-immigrant sentiment went rampant.
Absolutely. And you're such a rock star. You are such a rock star.
I get shy.
Reverend Rena was one of our speakers at opening worship in our virtual synod, and one of our Rainbow Award recipients this year at
that was so wonderful.
The banquet. And so you see pictures of her looking awfully awesome.
I had a bow tie.
The red with the bow tie and everything. And so just love what you're doing with the Spanish-speaking church, and for a community that really needs to know that God loves them in a culturally, what's the word I'm looking for, reflective, or like safe, and like it's
that connects with it. Yeah.
Because one of the things that I found in the UCC church, and you can speak to for your experience, is I have found so much love and acceptance and opportunity to utilize my gifts, but the struggle sometimes is bringing my blackness and that culture into
Totally.
space.
Totally.
And
I
because
understand.
I love that. So how do you reconcile and how do you
Yeah, I understand and it resonates what you are saying because, for instance, this space, General Senate, is wonderful because we get to show the world what we do. We get to show our allies what we do, but it's so wide. And there is moments when I just want to come back to my hotel room and put a telenovela and hear Spanish just to know that something to hold me, to ground
Yeah.
me, because bringing your authentic self to very predominantly white spaces exhausting.
Yeah.
Because structures make you always have to prove yourself, even if it's not the intention. In order to occupy the spaces, we have to prove we are worth of being in the space.
Absolutely. And that's one of the reasons why we call this the intersection, is so that people can understand when we bring all of ourselves to the table, there's a cost to that.
Yeah.
And even when you have a position, even when you have
That's our crucifixion, people. We get crucified.
absolutely, because there's a price for the ticket. There, like even when you're in a space and in a setting, and that costs you something culturally. That costs you something to have to be the voice of explaining. Oh, that's racist. Oh, that's we shouldn't do this. Or oh, how does it feel to be me and need to hear Spanish sometimes?
Yeah, exactly.
And sometimes I don't know if our white counterparts, because in this denomination is so centered, and again that they try.
Yeah, they do.
They
There's
try.
good intentions.
Yeah.
I have to admit,
And it's just hard
and it's just hard.
because we come from so many different backgrounds. So tell us what you're doing now for the denomination. Tell us what you're doing in California, your ministry.
Sure.
Yeah.
So in California, I run Ministerio Latino, which is the local ministry that serves LGBTQ, Spanish-speaking, Latinx immigrants. And we meet once a month, and we have a beautiful service. And we also have a Bible study, and the Bible study, which is virtual, brings people from other parts of Latin America. And there we try to do queer theology, and we do emotional healing, and this Bible study is in Spanish, and we have people connecting from Honduras, from Guatemala, from El Salvador, from Mexico, even from South America, from Chile. We have had people connecting back from all the way there. And here in the national UCC setting, what I do is I lead a program of inclusion called Encuentros Latinx, and Encuentros in Español means to encounter one another. So it's not just to meet one another, but to see one another. So it's Encuentros Latinx, and we are creating educational materials. We are creating a presence about LGBTQ in the mix of UCC churches, in UCC churches that haven't opened their doors, particularly Latinx congregations, and also for white-centered churches to understand that are Latinos in the mix,
Right.
that they have the salsa in the mix.
I love that. I love that. The salsa in the mix. So tell us about a young Rena before Reverend. Your experience. How did you come to, I don't know your orientation, but how did you come to understand your truth?
Wow. So young Rena, back in El Salvador, I already knew I was so different from other girls. I already had crushes on best friends, other young girls, and I think staying in El Salvador would have been really hard as the queer self I was, because I was feisty. I was very feisty. And then immigrating to the United States, part of the way I protected myself against racism was joining a Baptist church that was Spanish speaking, but kept me closeted through my early teenage years, my 20s. I married in that church to a man from El Salvador. I stayed married for 7 years. So once I saved my life by coming out because I felt like I was dying every day. I had to face that community's rejection, and that was one of the hardest things.
The church community's rejection.
The church community that has saved me from racism. Who was home where I could speak my Spanish, where I could worship in Espanol, where I could
That comfort
where I learned to be a leader because it taught me so much. I had to leave that behind to be my lesbian self and to understand that I wasn't going to live a married life to a man because that wasn't my truth. So yeah, the minute we told the deacons and the pastor, because we were the ideal couple,
of course,
the couple that people are told to emulate. Mujer de Dios, a woman of God, and a man of God.
We're recording. You're cool.
And
I'm about to say you would have.
And so we had to talk to deacons and pastor and say, hey, we're separating. And we didn't tell them why, but already the rumors were out.
Right.
My God, people were already praying for my gayness and all that. Once we told them, the pastor says, so what are you going to do with your eternal life? I remember that. That was the question in that session. So if you separate from your husband, what is going to happen to your eternal life?
Your soul. You're like,
I know. And at the time, I really didn't have that much tools on how to go back. But I did say, I'm going to trust God's grace.
Yes, God.
And I think trusting God's grace up to now.
Yes, God.
Has sustained me. Yeah.
And that, when I talk about the price of a ticket,
Yeah.
what do you give up to stay in the closet? You're giving up something.
Yeah.
What do you give up when you come out? Because you give up something. And sometimes it's that community.
It's that community
And it's
that knows you.
And that love.
Yeah.
And that. So when people say, I don't understand why people stay in Christian spaces where they know that aren't affirming, that's why. That's why we stay.
We stay.
And it's also scary because what happens if the very people who saved my life when I was sinking, when I needed that the most, what happens if I lose that community?
Yeah.
And
Exactly. And I couldn't give up my Jesus. That's the truth, I'm like, all right, and I just love the story of love of Jesus.
Yes.
It's just a story of love that I just couldn't
Speak up
lose.
just a little bit.
Yeah, I couldn't lose the story of love of Jesus. It's just something so ingrained as my culture. I grew up Catholic in times of the civil war in El Salvador, where Christians were fighting a revolution. So I know that Christ.
And liberating Christ. And so you come out, you lose that community. How do you find us? How do you find you?
It was a bunch of detours because, I first left the church. At the time, I was a young attorney in New York, in Long Island.
Attorney, y'all hear that?
Yeah.
A young attorney.
Yeah.
El Salvador.
Yes.
Young attorney.
And I just graduated from law school in '95, and I was practicing labor law on behalf of immigrant workers.
Yes, God.
Fighting their cases of unpaid wages, unpaid benefits. I started my little step, my baby steps as an activist, as an organizer. Every time we will win in court, but an employer didn't want to pay, we will rally in front of their businesses and their houses, and we're like, pay, we'll be back, pay us, pay. And so that whole thing had just started, and so I did lawyering for 5 years and then got pretty burned out of fighting cases of exploitation. I couldn't do it anymore.
There's a cost to doing that work too, for your physical, emotional, mental.
I was calculating wages owed to workers in my sleep, and was like, okay, and I had to leave the field. And that's when I started looking for another potential education and degree, and I thought, I like writing, maybe I will do a writing degree, a master in leadership. But then somebody who knew me really well said, what about divinity school? And I was like, divinity school? Does a divine school exist? To make you divine? And
exhibit hall is now closed. Thank you.
Yeah, and so I immediately started looking into that, and I remember going to a class in Union Seminary
in New York,
just to sit in a classroom, just to hear what seminary was like. And I remember that a black teacher talking about the idea of God post-World War II and how it had changed because of a terrible war. And I was like, I was eating it all up. I was like, oh my God, this is fascinating. The changing of the idea of God. And I thought, oh my God, if I'm going to spend time and money going back to school, it has to be something that awakens passion, and this seems to be it.
Absolutely.
And that's how I ended up in seminary, pursuing a new way of renewing myself intellectually. It wasn't because I wanted to be a pastor. That wasn't in my mind, or maybe in the back of my mind, but no. I went to seminary to save me from being a lawyer, to try to see if this gave me new skills. And seminary I attended Pacific School of Religion afterwards, and it was so engaging. It was also the place where my Christian self and my lesbian self reconciliated, and it was amazing. I had a nice 3 years there, and then I went back to nonprofit work with another bit of a school debt. But I felt that it was so important for me to have done seminary. And so as I continued doing work, people keep saying to me, you have the gifts of a pastor, you have the gifts of pastors, explore the possibilities. And they said, when you form groups, they look like churches. So even if you are working as a community organizer, it seems
you're still pastoring.
And that's when I was like, okay, if I'm going to be ordained, what's going to be the way? And I joined a UCC church in Oakland, California. And after a while, after attending as a visitor, I became a member, and then I was put into discernment. And then it was clear to me, if I was going to be ordained, it was for me to start the first Spanish-speaking church that was open and affirming.
Yes, God.
Yeah.
I love finding how people find UCC, because I feel like it helped me to save my relationship with Christ, which had helped me through so many things. And I refuse to believe the idea of God that some people had. Because when I tell people, like, people will ask, well, how can you be Christian with what Christianity has said about you being gay, or even what Christianity has said about black people? And I'm like, that's not the Jesus I know. The Jesus I know said, surely you will be with me in paradise. Said he would remember me. So I don't, like, Jesus was the crucified Palestinian Jew minority. That's the Jesus I know. I don't know this power capitalist, that's not the Jesus I know. So I'd love to find, how do we find, we find that liberation. And when you said seminary saved me from being a lawyer, from doing I just love that. So when we look at what that white supremacist, Christian nationalist idea of today is saying to trans people, is saying to queer people, is saying to black and brown people, what do you think we, as open and affirming Christians, what do you think we, as Christians in UCC, should be doing to push back against that narrative? What should we be doing for the attacks that are happening?
There is no just one way of doing it. That's the thing. It has to happen by taking over the streets. It has to happen by raising our voices. It has to happen by having some of us going into public office. It has to happen. It has to happen in the way these white supremacists are doing it. They are attacking us from every corner possible, and we cannot be meeting them just by praying.
Yep. So what I hear is we have to come out of our buildings.
Yeah, it cannot be just by praying, because they're gonna kill us. They are out there trying to kill us, literally.
Plotting and praying and legally finding ways
to kill us
and deny our humanity.
Yeah, and it's not an exaggeration, and you will think that we are like, what they call it, yelling wolf or screaming
crying
wolf.
Crying
wolf.
Yeah.
I'm terrible at that.
No,
idioms.
No, you got
idioms.
it. You were there.
It's not that. It's just so. You just feel it in your skin when you feel hate, and people trying to pierce at you in airports.
Yeah.
I go back to my bubble. I come back to Northern California. I'm safe there.
Mm-hmm.
But I always travel with my U.S. passport because my wife has told me, your brown ass is going to be deported one day.
Yep.
So you better have that passport with you. Don't just bring your ID.
Isn't that terrible? But this is what we have to do.
That's what we have to do.
This is what we have to do. Last question. 17-year-old Rena. Not attorney Rena, not Reverend Rena, not masters in literature Rena. What is your advice to 17-year-old Rena?
Oh, yeah. Get out of that closet soon enough. Don't get married at 19 because you don't know what you're doing. Get out of the closet soon because you're a hottie and you're going to have a lot of girlfriends if you get out of the closet soon, and you're going to have more fun that at a prayer service.
I love it. That is, if that's not an ending, I don't know what is. Come out of that closet soon because you're a hottie. So thank you for doing this. You are my friend. You are my friend. Thank you so much.
It's so fun to do it with you.
Yeah,
it's so
you.
fun. You
Thank
made
you.
it so fun.
I told you that the conversation with Reverend Rena was amazing, and I hope you were not disappointed. Thank you so much for checking out the pod. Please email me at ona@openandaffirming.org. It's all spelled out. If you have any questions or any ideas for people to interview or topics to cover, I would love to hear from you. I would love for this to be a dialogue. Thank you for those who have sent in information or who have sent in things. You're going to be hearing those on air soon. Please keep those announcements that we gave. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook at ucc.coalition. Follow us on Twitter at ucccoalition, all spelled out. We would love to hear from you. Once again, Reverend Derek here, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and TikTok at Rev Derek Terry. Thank you so much for listening. Visit openandaffirming.org/donate. if you would like to invest in the work that we are doing. Take care. God bless. Love you. Peace.